of Ugandan service providers on the WHO recommendation on hormonal contraceptives and HIV risk. This work is being done under a fellowship project, and I'm based at the International Community of Women Living with HIV, Eastern Africa, doing an AVAC HIV Prevention Research Advocacy Fellowship. AVAC is Global Advocacy for HIV Prevention. And this work started when results were released last year by Hefron and colleagues. And the results showed that there was an increased risk for HIV acquisition and transmission amongst women who are using hormonal contraceptives, and the risk was higher for those who are using the injectable Depo-Provera. And following those results, we felt as advocates that women, being the main service users, needed to understand these results and give their perspectives about this issue. So in January, early February, WHO held a technical consultation which reviewed all data regarding the issue of hormonal contraceptives and HIV risk. And eventually that technical consultation took place, and a technical statement was released with a recommendation, and it also had a clarification. But as women, we held a women's consultation where we had the women being told about building their capacity, understanding the results. We had the people from the partners trial team that came up with that finding, came and spoke to the women, told them, and they understood the findings, and they generated their thoughts about the findings. And this was prior to the WHO consultation, and women came up with their recommendations, which were presented in the WHO technical meeting. And amongst these women, we had women from 5 countries: Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. And these women included women living with HIV. We had a representation. And amongst the recommendations that women came up with were, because when these results were released, we had kind of friction between the HIV sector and the family planning sector. Everyone saying family planning is more important than preventing HIV because there are so many reasons. It reduces maternal mortality and so many. And HIV prevention advocates are also saying preventing HIV is very important. So there was a twist, and the women are they would not be divided by either or approaches. They needed both to be addressed, and that brings in the issue of integrating services. And then the women they also recommended that women needed to know that what the recommendation says. The WHO recommendation says current data were not sufficiently conclusive to change the medical eligibility criteria on contraceptive use, but it also contained that clarification which says that because of that potential risk, women using progesterone non-injectables contraception, that Depo-Provera, were to be strongly advised to use condoms and other preventive measures. So the women mentioned that they needed to know that potential risk so that they make informed decisions in which family planning method they should be using. So basically, what happened when WHO released their statement, as ICW and EVAC, we went ahead and gathered information from service providers on what they thought about the statement. And what we found out was was that most service providers said the new recommendation didn't need to change like their programming or the way they performed their work, and yet the clarification said women needed to be cancelled on potential risks. And the other finding that was there was the service providers also were not willing to tell the women about that potential risk, which is mentioned about in the statement. And but they are all aware about the statement because they were relating. If you told the women that there is this potential risk, women would draw off using depot, and yet it's the most commonly used, and then maternal mortality would go high, and so on and so on. And so basically what we came up with, we also found that service providers were, because I was visiting both family planning and HIV service points, we found that in most family planning centers, the service providers were not willing to, like, giving HIV services wasn't something that they were in for. Most of them were like, but the women come here to control pregnancies. Why should we tell them about HIV? And comments that were being given were like, if a woman has been using depot for, say, the past 2 years, how then do I start telling her to use a condom, which I've not been telling her to use, or which she hasn't been using before? And besides, most women use depot without the knowledge of their husbands. How are they now going to start telling their husbands? So there were quite some issues there. But in conclusion, we realized that integration is still a long way to go in my country, because if the service providers can say they will not talk about HIV, yes, they are offering a service in sexual reproductive health, then it becomes quite challenging. And we realized that there is need for training and continuous medical education for service providers if integration is to be realized. Then the providers should give accurate information to the women about available family planning options, and all the information, both risks and benefits, so that the women make informed choices. And this is also putting into perspective the rights of the women, the right to know. They need to know what's around them and what they're using. And we also conclude and recommend that increasing family planning method mix is key, so that women have a variety of options. And we also recommend that WHO speeds up the promise that they made in developing a communication strategy and the guidance for health workers to communicate this recommendation, because at the moment it's difficult for health workers to communicate the recommendation. And we are, as I conclude, this is a project that's still ongoing, basically work that we are doing. We are still going around the service providers to find out what they think about method mix, increasing method mix, and also forming a strong group of advocates, both nationally and globally, to continue monitoring WHO and other agencies in the next steps that are being taken, because at the moment, the communication strategy should be in its development and guidance. I think let me stop there. You're all welcome to my poster. I have a poster that we've put up if you have any more questions.
So thank you, Lydia, for bringing out the issue.